From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I am Doris Polo. The head of El Salvador's parliament has accused President Nayib Bukele of an attempted coup after soldiers entered the building as Bukele demanded lawmakers approve a loan to boost security. Bukele called an extraordinary weekend session of parliament to ask it to approve a $109 million loan to equip the military and police to fight against violent gangs. The loan has pitted the executive against lawmakers in a country with one of the world's highest murder rates. In response to the troops, the Speaker of Parliament indefinitely suspended Monday's plenary session, whose only agenda item was the loan.
The governing board and the political commission have met to analyze the situation and take action on this attempted coup on the legislative body. It is not possible that 28 years after the peace agreements, we have members of our armed forces invading the legislative body with weapons of war.
Groups of protesters gathered in San Salvador on Monday night to condemn the use of troops by President Bukele. They called him a fascist and demanded that the Supreme Court take action. The right-wing Arena Party also protested.
To democratically elected President Nayib Bukele, we demand that you rectify your behavior so that it complies with the mechanisms that guarantee the rule of law, which has cost this country so much. To the Supreme Court of Justice, that you rule as soon as possible to guarantee the rule of law.
It is necessary that this legislative assembly expresses its condemnation against the invasion and militarized seizure of its facilities as instructed by the President of the Republic and General Commander of the Armed Forces. The entry of military and police forces armed with rifles and threatening attitude constitute as an exhibition of brute force to intimidate lawmakers. It is necessary that this assembly rejects and repudiates such regrettable events that clearly violate the independence of the legislative body, the parliamentary inviolability, and consequently breach the constitutional order and seriously affect our democratic system.
El Salvador's Constitutional Court also ruled that Sunday's occupation of Parliament by soldiers and police was unconstitutional. Despite the military presence, only 28 members of the Parliament turned up to Sunday's extraordinary session. Members from the left-wing FMLN and the right-wing Arena parties refused to attend. Bukele said he would give the Parliament one more week to pass the legislation. Our correspondent Ernesto Avalos has the latest from San Salvador.
On Monday, the Constitutional Court accepted a request from lawyers to declare unconstitutional the President's demand for an extraordinary session of the Legislative Assembly to approve his request for a $109 million loan. The Assembly then decided to hold a session without the pressure from President Bukele. The session adopted measures to prevent Bukele from using the army and police to coerce the parliament. The lawmakers also ordered the head of the armed forces and the Minister of Defense not to engage in activities that are beyond their constitutional remit. They hope that normal operation of the country's institutions will now be restored.
Our correspondent in San Salvador with that report. Moving on, the UK government has deported about 20 people to Jamaica this Tuesday, despite a court of appeal issuing an emergency judgment against it. On Monday night, the court restricted the removal of the 56 men and women unless they were satisfied they had access to an attorney. Since last month, the detainees were prevented from contacting their lawyers due to problems with the O2 phone network at their detention centers. Many of the individuals scheduled to be deported have been in the UK since they were children, reigniting Windrush protests. Now, before the deportations took place, a representative for Black Lawyers for Justice, Lee Jaspers, described the UK's action as disingenuous and racist.
We're calling on the Jamaican government in particular to deny the British plane the ability and the right to land. because there can be no confidence in this government's ability to get these decisions right. They've been guilty of racism in the past. They're guilty of racism in relation to this flight. Windrush demonstrates that. We've got the famous comedian, Rolf Harris, an Australian, very high repute, sang the world-famous tune that Tied My Kangaroo Down, guilty of serious paedophilia offences here in the United Kingdom. He's not being deported to Australia. We've just had a Asian young man born abroad, released from jail, committed terrorist attacks on the streets of Breton in South London. He wasn't subject to deportation. Why is this seemingly specially reserved for black people and people from Africa and the Caribbean? So you're right, there is a double standard, and that's my appeal to the general Caribbean and African nations out there. Please see beyond the hype and the propaganda of this government. The reality is that we are here as black British people being subject to the most horrendous and egregious infringements of our human rights. And we're seeing legal action and a judicial review in the High Court being lodged now. We hope to get an oral hearing in front of a judge this afternoon. If we are successful, then that could ground the flight, but we're still waiting to get access to a judge in order to have that hearing. The second type of action is there is a mass picket of 10 Downing Street taking place in the next couple of hours, where we can expect hundreds, if not thousands of people to turn out, even though it's windy, it's rain, it's cold right now in London.
In Europe, final results from Ireland's general elections have confirmed the unprecedented success of the nationalist party Sinn Fein. Although Fianna Fáil got one seat more in Parliament, Sinn Fein won the largest number of votes and still aims to form a government.
I may well be the next Taoiseach, yes. Sinn Féin won the election, we won the popular vote. We've recorded a historic victory for our party. This election has been a drawing of a line in the sand. It's been a very clear message to the old two of the political establishment that their days of domination are over.
Trade unions and other social movements have been marching in Venezuela against the latest sanctions imposed by the United States. The demonstration through the center of Caracas was led by workers at the state-owned airline Conviasa. On Friday, the U.S. Treasury added Conviasa to its list of sanctioned Venezuelan companies. That means it will be more difficult for the airline to make international payments. However, Conviasa insists it will continue to fly normally.
We have to unite our spirit and our hopes into one. This is not an aggression against one man. Some might like me and support me as president, and some might not, and I respect them. But these illegal and criminal sanctions under international law are not lobbied against President Maduro. They are used to hurt the people of Venezuela, and we must reject them and be united as a nation. What is their justification for the sanctions against Conviasa? How can they justify sanctioning a public service company, a transport company, such a noble company? What harm do they think they're doing to me? The damage is done to the people of Venezuela, to the workers, and to a whole country.
Coming up, we reflect on Nelson Mandela's prison release some 30 years later. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Tuesday, 11th of February, marks the 30th anniversary of the release of South African anti-apartheid icon Nelson Mandela from prison after nearly 3 decades behind bars for fighting against the inhumane apartheid system. A series of events will take place across the country to commemorate the day that ushered in a new era. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to deliver a speech from the balcony of the Cape Town City Hall on Tuesday, where Mandela addressed thousands of supporters after his release from prison on that day in 1990.
Into a new South Africa.
At least 30 people have been killed in a militia raid in Nigeria's Borno state. The attackers targeted a village on Sunday evening, raising fears that women and children have also been abducted. Government officials have blamed Islamist fighters, though there has not been any claim of responsibility just yet. The decade-long insurgency has killed 36,000 people and displaced around 2 million in northeast Nigeria.
We were just sitting in the front seat of the car and unexpectedly we heard them shouting, "Allahu Akbar," meaning God is great, and the shootings continued. They first killed a lady in the front seat of the car, then we started running away. They killed over 10 people and killed as well as burned 2 young babies in the car. They also abducted a number of men and women passengers.
The Malian president has for the first time acknowledged contacts with jihadist insurgents, a move that the government has long rejected. However, the president's announcement comes as he dispatched troops to the key town of Kidal that has become a symbol of its lack of control over the country's north. Mali has struggled to contain a jihadist revolt that broke out in 2012 and which has killed thousands of military and civilian lives. And now the conflict has not only spread to central Mali from the north, but also to neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger.
It is my duty and my mission to create all possible spaces and to do everything possible so that by one means or the other we can achieve some sort of peace, because the number of deaths in the Sahel today is becoming exponential, and I believe that it is time that certain avenues were explored.
Vote counting is underway in Cameroon following the country's parliamentary and municipal elections. The ballot was overshadowed by violence and a boycott by the opposition. The ruling People's Democratic Movement is expected to retain its parliamentary majority. Official results are expected within 2 weeks. The polls were characterized by a low turnout in the English-speaking regions. Those who want an independent state for the marginalized English-speaking regions called for a complete boycott of the polls and threatened those who wished to take part. The Malawian parliament has started probing the country's electoral commission on competency. Following the country's constitutional ruling on the past elections, the Public Appointments Committee of Parliament summoned members of the Electoral Commission for questioning. Commissioner Mary Nkosi admitted before the committee that the electoral body made a mistake in declaring Peter Mutharika winner of the election before attending to complaints made by other political parties.
By Almighty God, my own conscience tells me that we erred, because I believed that we should have looked at we should have gone to court, sought for an extension to look at these serious allegations of changing figures, tipexing.
Moving to Latin America, Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Court is putting obstacles in the way of some of the main candidates from the movement towards socialism for the May 3rd elections. They include presidential candidate Luis Arce and the former president Evo Morales. Now, the court has given them 3 days to provide allegedly missing documents to approve their nominations. The requirements include evidence that they are not involved in any criminal case, have served in the military, speak 2 languages, and are permanent residents of the country. The trial of Ecuador's former president Rafael Correas started on Monday. The former president, who is being investigated for alleged corruption, maintains the trial is a witch hunt aimed at putting an end to his political career ahead of next year's elections. While he would be unable to run for president due to constitutional term limits, Correas could still run for office as a legislator in February 2021. Ecuador's National Court of Justice had earlier stated that this trial could not be further delayed as lawyers previously requested. A strike at Brazil's state-controlled oil company Petrobras is now into its 11th day. About 20,000 workers at 91 sites are taking part in the nationwide stoppage triggered by the dismissal of 1,000 workers at a fertilizer plant in the south of Brazil. The Oil Workers Union says the dismissals are part of a wider plan to privatize the country's biggest company. They want the dismissed workers reinstated and the company to comply with their collective labor agreement. Staying in Brazil, heavy rains have paralyzed parts of Sao Paulo. Some of the city received 100 millimeters of rain within 3 hours, swelling the Tietê River to its highest level in 15 years, according to the state's infrastructure secretary. The Tietê and Pinheiros rivers overflowed, flooding nearby highways and trapping drivers and passengers for hours. Several flights have also been cancelled at the city's international airport, while 43 schools were cancelled. Classes, buses were operating partially, and some urban trains were cancelled as well. We'll be taking one last break, and when we return, we'll provide you with an update on the coronavirus. Stay with us. Chinese President Xi Jinping has visited a community and a hospital in Beijing to inspect the effectiveness of measures implemented to halt the outbreak of the novel coronavirus as the death toll rises to 1,017 in mainland China. President Xi met frontline medical staff at a hospital treating infected patients, calling the situation in Hubei province, the virus epicenter, still very grave. He urged more decisive measures to contain the spread of the epidemic that has sickened over 42,000 people so far. An expert team of the World Health Organization has touched down in Beijing to aid Chinese authorities in their fight against the outbreak of the novel coronavirus. Scientists say that the speed of the transmission shows the potential for the novel coronavirus to become a global pandemic.
In recent days, we have seen some concerning instances of onward transmission from people with no travel history to China, like the cases reported in France yesterday and the United Kingdom today. The detection of this small number of cases could be the spark that becomes a bigger fire. But for now, it's only a spark. Our objective remains containment. We have now identified 168 labs around the world with the right technology to diagnose coronavirus. We have sent kits to Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, DRC, Egypt, Ethiopia, Gabon, Ghana, Iran, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria, Tunisia, Uganda, and Zambia. Many of those countries have already started using them.
Now, as China continues its many efforts to fight the coronavirus outbreak, the government has also had to battle the spread of fake news and the rise of xenophobic attitudes against its citizens.
I'm not a virus is one of the slogans being used to criticize growing xenophobic attitudes towards Chinese citizens because of the coronavirus outbreak that has infected over 40,000 people.
We are seeing xenophobic expressions used not only against the people of China, but also Chinese products and the nation as a whole. This is a sign of deep ignorance and are not casual events. These attacks are a part of the disinformation campaign being waged against the Chinese government.
China has had to fight rumors and lies published in Western news outlets and social networks that hope to spread negative opinions about Chinese people. One of the most seen social media posts shows a woman with Asian features eating a bat, which many claim had happened in Wuhan. But the woman in the video eventually came out to prove that it was filmed 4 years ago in an island in the Western Pacific.
This information being made up by people who do not know what the real situation is. They are not here and do not know the moment-to-moment developments. There are those who want to spread terror and panic using racism and xenophobia. In Facebook and other platforms, we are seeing that people are mocking the situation, attacking the Chinese people as a whole.
Rumors and false information have given rise to anti-Chinese sentiment in many countries, as many agree that this strategy seeks to minimize the great efforts made by the government to stop the spread of the coronavirus and to save as many lives as possible.
There are clear geopolitical interests behind these attacks. Let's not forget China is the second largest economy in the world and is still waging a trade war with the United States. So certain players have shown interests in slowing down progress in China's advances, such as the Belt and Road Initiative or the Made in China 2025 strategic plan.
Chinese authorities have made several calls to all nations to contribute with the efforts to stop the novel coronavirus and to stop the spread of fake news and xenophobia. Even the World Health Organization has said that cooperation and international understanding should be the only strategy in these moments.
Moving to the Middle East, hundreds of thousands of Iranians are taking part in mass gatherings to mark the 41st anniversary of the Islamic 1979 revolution. Rallies have taken place in more than 5,000 locations across the country. Addressing crowds that converged in Tehran's Freedom Square, President Hassan Rouhani said the revolution remains strong and that attempts by the U.S. and Israeli governments to destroy it will fail. This year's rallies coincided with the 40th day memorial for top General Qasem Soleimani, who was assassinated in a U.S. drone strike in Baghdad in early January.
America can't do a damn thing through the sanctions. Even if we die from poverty and hunger, we will not compromise with America. No way. I'm telling this to officials, foreigners, and America.
El Salvador has hosted its first beauty pageant for the LGBTQ community, but the winner says there is still a long way for the conservative country dominated by machismo to accept sexual diversity. After being crowned Miss Gay El Salvador, 25-year-old drag queen Wendy Valenzuela says she is a little scared for her triumph, as El Salvador has seen at least 600 members of the LGBTQ community assassinated since 1993. But the organizer, Somos Familia Foundation, said the pageant came together to make the LGBTQ community more visible and promote tolerance.
I feel a little bit afraid because we know that in El Salvador there is homophobia. All over the world it exists, but especially in our country, and we are exposed when we talk like this, transforming to girls. We are exposed to violence, to physical and verbal aggression.
Currently, in the last few months, we have been seeing many crimes against our LGBTQ community, and the President of the Republic's response is that there are zero crimes. So what are we?
Over the weekend, Nicaragua hosted its first major surf championship of 2020 at La Boquita Beach, about 75 kilometers from the capital, Managua, on the Pacific side of the country.
Under the dazzling sun, people from all walks of life gathered to witness Nicaragua's 5th International Surf Championship.
These kinds of events are very important for us because they help us promote tourist destinations in our country. They also boost the local economy and local businesses.
More than 170 surfers tried to tame the giant waves, divided into 6 categories, including men, women, open international, and various age groups for teens.
Once you connect with the ocean and nature, the vibe is different. The body feels more excited, healthier once it enters the water.
Nicaragua has hosted 4 international surf competitions since 2012, and it's considered to have some of the best waves in the world. It has also been recognized for its safety and its reasonable living costs.
I
believe surfing is a great sport. It helps us. We have international categories. We have lots of people from around the world who came here to take part of the championship. This is great because we come to know more about their culture. It makes you more open-minded. The first 4 places were rewarded in each category, and they are the ones who can represent Nicaragua in the upcoming Surfing World Cup that will take place in El Salvador in April.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thanks for watching.